Welcome to the Perfect Place to Put a Practice podcast by Scott McDonald and DrDemographics.com, the best source of demographic, psychographic, and marketing information for professionals.
Hello, this is Scott McDonald of Dr. Demographics. Today we're talking in this episode of religiosity and demographics. Now, this is particularly important if one is hoping to have in a practice a group of people based on their age, whether they're older or younger, children or youth. So the religiosity and demographics is important to know, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Historically, the application of religiosity has been secondary to the study of demographics. Now, frankly, it takes people, they get a little nervous when they talk about God and faith and demographics. They feel more comfortable discussing income and educational attainment and population growth in a community. Even age and marital status is more palatable to them as a field of study. But in considering why the birth rate has dropped, we must frankly deal with the implications of religiosity. It is undeniable that the population will have children in greater numbers, according to national statistical models from the UN and other sources. Family values and religiosity are mostly prized with parents and children in a family setting. But as Nicolae Ceausescu, former president of Romania, learned the hard way, you cannot force people to have children they do not want. And as modern China is learning, artificially manipulating birth rates is a very tricky and unreliable business that can end in economic and demographic disaster. The bottom line is that there is a big disparity between states and counties in the U.S., according to the U.S. Census Bureau, that will result in a major realignment of the House of Representatives in the next decade, and religiosity is increasingly in importance in a driving sense behind it. Now, most people, or some people, love it. Some are going to hate it. Dr. Demographics can read the tea leaves to reveal the trends of religiosity and childbirth and how they relate to what you're trying to do. This is no simple matter and involves a great deal of background knowledge. Whenever one speaks about religiosity, how closely one ranks the religious and spiritual observance with the corresponding demographic lifestyle, many people, their eyes will glaze over and they'll suddenly remember something that they had to do back home. Sure, I get it, but there is some significant implications for this data that doctors should consider, even if the topic of religiosity does not fascinate them. Now let's review why this matters. Religiosity covers a wide range of lifestyle choices and habits. For example, charitable giving goes up dramatically, and the likelihood of suffering from violent crime will go down. Where there is high religiosity, the perception of the quality of life tends to increase among the population. People rate the friendliness of their neighbor that it tends to improve as their perception of property values increases. No one has been able to measure where the value comes from, although there are observations that are present. There was a book called Who Really Gives, or Who Really Cares? The Surprising Truth About Compassionate Conservatism by Arthur C. Brooks. Number 2, There is strong correlation between religiosity and birth rate. Those who regularly practice a religion, regardless of the religion, will have a higher birth rate. Jonathan Last wrote the book, What to Expect When No One's Expecting. From a national, state, or a large cluster of people to certain stable, it must be a replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman to be totally stable. Few states in the U.S. approach this rate, and most are falling below that 2.1 births per woman. Some nations, including South Korea and Japan, are far below this and face extinction. They often lack the presence, of hope in their society. That is something that having children tends to give, the idea that tomorrow matters. And 3, people who have a high score in religiosity in their communities give and receive the most and most faithful referrals in their healthcare practices. So, in other words, religiosity does match the referral patterns of people in the neighborhood. Their life expectancy and general health is almost always statistically better and is longer. This is trackable statistically. Now, I ought to say right off, there are some people who resent it. They resent the idea that religious people have more kids, and they tend to be happier and take a different life perspective. Some people are bothered by it, but it is an undeniable researched fact. The common reaction I get when I share this data with my audience is, well, of course this is probably true in that place, assuming that it's a place with high religiosity. They are some kind of fanatics. They're weird. Well, maybe so. But there are statistical realities that are undeniable in showing correlations between religiosity patterns and happiness. And the population tends to increase. True. Success is contained within one's frame of mind. It doesn't depend on the number of children you have, nor the neighborhood you live in. But when we track the demographic patterns like satisfaction, demographic patterns like religiosity have positive factors that correspond to behavior that are favorable to various aspects of practice. These have been correlated to demographics like high birth rates. Now, while birth rates have been sinking recently, those aspects that relate to increased birth rates are particularly significant. In other words, when nobody is having many children, those places that have a reason for having many children are valued. If practices, particularly in pediatrics, are looking for reliable places to grow, religiosity is a good statistic to track, and it can be tracked statistically. Now, we can see that there is no cause and effect between religiosity and increased birth rates, but a high correlation between the two seems firmly fixed. Therefore, the relationship between the two is strong. Ergo, if one finds a higher than average number of births per woman, a review of the religiosity of the population will tend to predict that the correlation is in order. Now, in his book, and I mentioned him before, Jonathan Last, What to Expect When No One's Expecting, is a good read and very helpful, particularly to people who are serving an adolescent population or children. Now, I like Last. I find it very interesting to read, and he makes a good statistical case. Keep in mind he is not making the case for a certain religion or belief system, just that some kind of belief matters in achieving an outcome like higher birth rates. Dr. Demographics keeps and publishes all kinds of data from across the nation. Now, this includes the locations with favorable competition ratios of all practice types. Locations with the highest immigrant totals, for example, highest incomes, distribution of age, and educational attainment, and much more. Yes, religiosity is a factor we tracked. If you want the answers on practice locations and the statistics of the population in that area, we can help you. All of this has been on my mind recently. My oldest son has announced the birth of our 10th grandchild. We're almost real Utahns. And my oldest daughter has shared the news that she will give birth to another grandchild in June. She's the PhD in market research. Now, I'm aware that there are many people who are not so blessed. One doctor cursed me to my face for contributing to global warming, but he was always a little gloomy, and I take it in stride. But I believe that there is a net benefit to having children in a large family. I think those advantages will become more apparent as fewer people have large families. It is not easy, but it is worthwhile. And to tell you the truth, most demographers know it. So do large and stable families help us in healthcare? I have to conclude that they do. They are a salve to our emotional health, if you will. As I have mentioned in other recent posts, the birth rate figures are appearing to gain in importance as inflation looms. The labor participation rate is declining, and interest rates are swinging higher. In the short term, we are in for a bumpy ride when it comes to birth rates and the economy in the U.S. Therefore, we are going to have to watch our cash and investments very closely. Right now, the only type of practice I would consider is one that can deliver well on production and collections. And I mean, it's got to deliver well on productions and collections in a short time frame, soon. That implies that you are going to have to do some thinking about your practice site viability as a function of time. We see all kinds of projections, but for now, at least, I would lean on the conservative side of things. This will be true of at least through June 2023. So these factors of family size, birth rates, and income are going to want to be known by the doctors. Now, what does it take to turn around a practice of success in attracting patients with negative demographics, including birth rate? To me, it starts with loving people. If you're a people person, this isn't so hard to do. It also requires the correct application of apologia, that's a communications theory, the two-step model, which uses experts and elites, and framing theories. Now, you may want to look these up on Google to get a full background and the statistics. Scott McDonald, that's me, is a healthcare demographer, consultant, and professor of public relations, and I have consulted doctors on image restoration for 40 years. Personal conflicts, referral-based reparations, and apologia services, that's how it's pronounced, and partnership creation, by the way, are negotiations that I can help with. In-person consultation and telephone meetings are available, and hourly rates can be quoted. So, If you've got a people problem, a communications problem, I hope you'll give me a call. This isn't just a simple demographic report. It's something that deals with the science of personality and personality type. Practice in doctor image restoration and rehabilitation has been done for us for a long time. The consultation on practice promotion and public relations is also available. So you can give us a call at 800-849-0499 or take a look at our website at drdemographics.com. You may want to give us a call to talk over your specific case in a confidential consultation. I am Scott McDonald. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to talking to you. Bye-bye.